Hey there, listener. Cass jumping in before we get started with the episode for a content warning. This week we are talking about Tails Gets Trolled, which if you are even remotely familiar with, you are probably understanding of the fact that this is a piece of fan media which is rife with slurs and all sorts of just nastiness. So, heavy content warning for that, and because of this topic, we are going to be talking about some things that might be difficult. As always, if this episode isn't for you, that is totally okay. Topics include, but are not limited to, including brief mentions of rape, murder, drug use, online harassment and dogpiling, suicide, bestiality, hacking, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, racism, ableism, and discussions of HRT and testosterone as well, if those are sensitive topics for you. All that being said, let's get into the episode. Hi, welcome to Author's Note.
Don't listen.
My name is Cass.
And my name is Teese.
Welcome to the Midnight Lounge.
Ooh,
It's full of smoke. We're pre-smoking ban.
some smooth jazz, some crinkle of ice slowly melting in your glass while you talk to the cute dame in the seat next to you at the bar.
Oh, we're dropping dame now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Felt fitting.
It is a perpetually rainy day here, and it's been thundering on and off all day, so it's very mellow and lazy here.
Yeah, it's been on-off raining all day by me too, but no thunder and lightning.
Beautiful.
But I do love me some good thunder and lightning. I'm going to do most of the talking, so you're just on Mr. Teese's wild ride.
Love it. I can't... The entire time I'm screaming, I want to get off, I want to get off.
Buddy, how do you think I felt? But how are you?
Teese, have you... No, I'm cutting you off. Have you... Have you watched or read or taken part in anything fun or cool this week?
So, I didn't consume any media besides what today's episode is on, but I celebrated my friend's birthday yesterday. And instead of doing a paint and sip, we did a plant and sip. So we made little plant terrariums at this little place by me. It was very delightful. I got to make 2 plants with 3 succulents in them combined.
You made the plants.
I made the succulents. Me, particularly.
Where do succulents come from?
My boobie.
No. Oh, no.
Yeah.
That was the worst possible answer you could have given me.
I couldn't think of anything. I'm sorry.
What did you sip at the plant and sip?
A rosé. My friends were like, buy the wine. And I was like, oh boy, I haven't had wine in literal years because it causes heartburn. But
that's why you were up late last night.
Actually, yeah, it probably was. But yeah, I was okay. Everything turned out fine in the long run. But what about you, Cass? What have you been consuming?
I've been watching Catfish.
Yeah?
Sometimes you just need some crappy fake reality TV. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's Catfish.
Yeah, that's exciting. And Catfish is cool.
The wildness that occurs on Catfish. The absolute, I don't understand people.
It's okay.
I don't understand people.
One time, I thought that I befriended Jamie Lynn Spears on Neopets.
Stop.
I'll tell you about that story later. But one time, I seriously thought that I befriended Jamie Lynn Spears, and for years, I thought it was her. And then maybe about, I'm gonna say
like a week ago, you finally realized.
No, it was by the time I was in college, I was like, that probably wasn't really her. And, I knew it wasn't her, but, it kind of came to, the actual thought to the forefront of my mind, being like, that was not Jamie Lynn Spears at all.
What if it was, though?
What if it was?
What if it was?
Just like how what if Taylor Swift was a 4chan user, same thing.
Wasn't she on Tumblr?
Yeah, she was, but there's, this whole theory that she was on 4chan. But anyway, let's talk about some other stuff.
Taylor Swift actually wrote Tails Gets Trolled.
Queen. Congratulations. Girl boss behavior.
So this week, our patrons decided on our wonderful topic. Our wonderful topic. Which is Tails Gets Trolled.
So I'm going to take you on a journey right now. So thank you, everybody, once again, just to echo what Cass said. Thank you so much for voting on the Patreon poll. If you are interested in joining the Patreon, that's just patreon.com/authorsnotepod. And every month we do a poll on what a possible episode will be. So if you kind of want to make a vote and make us do a horrible episode, now's your time to join because you have until the end of the month. So that's pretty exciting. And I hope you guys like this episode because you're the ones who picked it.
As a notice, we are not going to have an episode next week.
Yeah.
We are going to be on spring break, which is a thing we're going to try to do pretty regularly, is like every few months take at least a week off to recharge and take a break because this podcast can take a lot out of us. But next week, there will be an episode of Show and Tell going up on the Patreon that's available to $5 patrons. That is a monthly episode that patrons get access to. And despite how glum or morose I may sound, I'm actually really excited about this week's episode. And I had a lot of fun, I guess you could call it that, reading what I did of Tails Gets Trolled.
How far did you get? Do you know? Did you get farther than
I got to chapter 10.
Okay.
I literally stopped after the Kermit because I got what I wanted out of it and I was too exhausted to continue. I was like, I can't anymore. I can't.
So before we talk about Tails Gets Trolled, we need to kind of talk about two things, which is Sonic the Hedgehog and what a troll is.
What is Sonic?
I don't know. So I assume that everybody listening does know what Sonic the Hedgehog is and what a troll is, but also could be wrong, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I love to be like, yes, I'm going to talk about all this weird, obscure music and anime, and then I don't bother to explain what it is, but then I explain what some of the most popular franchises on Earth are. But anyway, sorry in advance, I've never actually played a Sonic game in my life before.
Oh my god. You can't be a co-host on this podcast anymore.
Well, you're going to have to fix that, because I'm sure is not going to fix that.
I'm currently looking for a new co-host. You have to have played Sonic. That's it. Those are the only requirements.
You'd be nothing without me. You would be absolutely nothing without me.
What would you do without all of this Neopets errata?
Do you know who I am? I'm the one who's doing this episode, Caspian! Anyway. Never played a Sonic game, but what I'm going to say what knowledge I know of Sonic is that you're a hedgehog with attitude. You run fast.
Wrong already.
What?
No, I'm kidding.
You run fast. This game is a platformer, especially the original games. The first game, you freed animals from cages that were Dr. Eggman's, right?
I know that you do that in Sonic Adventure, too.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. Tails is there in that one, right?
Baby, I don't know.
See, oh, yeah, I played Sonic.
I've played a few of the Sonic games,
okay.
And they are all, I would say, wildly disparate in tone, in gameplay mechanics, and in quality.
Yeah, sounds about right. So I guess it's
You are a little hedgehog and you run fast. His origins are unknown, though.
Okay.
We've never gotten, like, a totally solid, concrete, consistent answer on what made Sonic.
But most importantly, you just kind of run, you say Sonic speed, you stop Eggman from taking over the world, essentially. Sorry.
You collect little rings.
Yeah, some Chaos Emeralds. Knuckles is there.
It's always been odd to me that he's Eggman, but he's also Dr. Robotnik. Is his name Eggman, or is that just like a pejorative that Sonic came up with for him because he looks like egg?
You're asking me. I don't know. But
listeners, let us know.
Let us know. Sonic fans who know way more about Sonic than we do, please tell us. So,
people who are passionate about Sonic are very passionate about
truly
Sonic.
Powerful. And quick reading recommendation, but Sonic was Sega's answer to Nintendo's Mario, essentially. So, though this has nothing to really do with Sonic, with Tails Gets Trolled, if you are into that kind of era of video game history, I would actually highly recommend Console Wars by Blake J. Harris. It is a book on how the CEO of Sega kind of kickstarted Sonic and how Sega became a frontrunner and pushed Nintendo a little bit on its heels when it came to the video game world. Did you know that the CEO of Sega at that time was the guy who's responsible for Flintstone gummies?
Can you imagine being born and God looks at you and says, son, you're gonna change the fucking course of human history.
I know. Truly a fucking Chad. I did never finish that book though, so I don't know how good he is at his job, but
what if it gets incredibly problematic at the end?
I don't know. So I guess maybe don't fully take this recommendation.
The very last sentence of the book is, I condone Gamergate.
Please don't. But from what I read, it was good. I liked it. It was a little dry, but it was worth the read. You know, it was cool. I enjoyed it. So on the other side of the spectrum, we have to know what a troll is. And a troll is basically somebody who intentionally upsets other people, usually especially on the internet. Trolling is usually found in comments, videos, and the iconic phrase, you mad bro, or cool story babe, now make me a sandwich, is pretty classic internet trolling from when it became popular. So on October 10th, 2011, DeviantArt user Laserbot posted the first page of Tales Gets Trolled, and within a span of a week, the first chapter was posted, but then within the first few months, the first 4 chapters were posted on DeviantArt. So this was done in really rapid succession, and clearly this kid was just making pages, and I'm not sure if he just was powered by like that teenage energy.
We should talk a little bit probably about the aesthetic of Tales Gets Trolled.
Yeah, definitely.
Every chapter is 21 pages, at least up until the point that I got to. I don't know if that breaks conventional.
It does eventually, but it is mentioned that, like, it's literally fourth wall broken that they do go longer than 21 pages, which is really funny.
It's definitely all made in, like, MS Paint, and there is, like, an evolution to the art style over time, but this is a lot of, like, shots of faces or shots of bodies and big walls of text that are, you know, spelled incorrectly. The grammar's a mess. It looks like a comic that maybe a middle schooler would make in MS Paint.
It's something you would make with your friends. Like, genuinely, it is something that you and your friends, or you would do just to, like, impress maybe somebody online type deal. It's so very clearly childhood excitement and energy, you know? And even if, like, the Laserbot, we don't know how old Laserbot is. I mentioned this later on, but not a lot is known about Laserbot as a whole, so we don't know.
Safer that way.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know if he was 14, if he was 20, if he was 12. Like, we just don't know, you know? So the first 4 chapters get pumped out pretty quickly, and the general plot so far is Tails, who is a Sonic character, gets trolled by trolls. Shocking. The plot delves kind of into, like, some revenge, some murder. And
a lot of murder.
And then, as the Tales Gets Trolled wiki puts it, multiple opposing factions, betrayal, necromancy, the clap, weed, romance, and more. So that part comes later, but that's a pretty good way to describe the whole entire series, shockingly enough. And by February 18th, Something Awful, the forum, discovered the comic, and to put it bluntly, kind of took to the comic the same way that a fire would to dry leaves. Tons of readers really couldn't tell if it was work of an actual troll or if it was somebody who was genuine and just was some kid making something awful, you know? And because we don't know a whole lot about Laserbot, it's really hard to tell how serious this comic actually is. And the most that we know is, like, his full name. We know that his 2 brothers helped him while making it later on, and their names are Ember Graham and Shimsohomo. And there's, like, some brief things that we know, like, for instance, Laserbot has faced homelessness before. His internet breaks pretty quickly. But personal life? not that much, you know?
I feel like we should say, before we get further into this,
Mm-hmm.
probably don't read Tails Gets Trolled.
Yeah! Oh, boy!
I think it's very important to recognize that with this piece of media that started in 2011,
Mm-hmm.
it is, and I mean pretty much every other panel is populated with horrible slurs, racist language, homophobic language, transphobic. It is incredibly incendiary and meant to be that way. But like, by no means is this something that is in any way appropriate or sensitive or empathetic in any way, or fully understanding of some of the themes with which it grapples and mentions. If you want to seek out and read Tails Gets Trolled, heavy content warning for just so many different things across the board. You, again, I'm not sure if it's on Does the Dog Die or not, but you can probably look up Tails Gets Trolled content warnings.
TV Tropes probably has a laundry list at this point, because once again, talking about the time period, it's one of those things that what do edgy teens write about and think are funny, even though they're not, in the early 2010s, you know? It's exactly what you assume it to be. There's murder, there's horrific...
there's suicide, there's rape, there's child murder, there's all sorts of
bestiality
homophobia.
mentioned. It's a lot.
It's aggressive.
It's a lot. A lot of really harmful depiction of drug use as well. So it's for somebody like me, like I read it and I'm just like, ooh, that's bad. But also at the same time, I'm very fortunate that I don't really have triggers, so I was able to stomach it. But there were moments when I was texting Cass like, this is going on right now.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
please.
I'm reading it and I'm like, I had to take breaks because I'm like, it's ridiculous, right? Because it is posed against this, like, very almost laughable aesthetic style, right? Because it is like, it's unrefined drawings that are done in MS Paint, and like, it's so comedic sometimes that it's like, you can't take this seriously. And then it's like, those things happen and they're very graphic despite, you know, the low fidelity, I'll say, visual quality, and it's still upsetting. And it's still upsetting to read those things. If all you're reading is slurs all day long, that gets to you.
Yeah, so I highly recommend that if you do read Tails Gets Trolled, please be careful. So, with the way that things are written, I'd assume that this kind of did start off as something very serious that a teenager would write, but then as time has gone by, because this has literally been a 10-year project, it's almost become satirical and self-aware, which I really appreciate. And the beautiful thing about this comic is, despite the beginning chapters being a walking meme in a way, it grows and develops in ways that most writers wish that their pieces could turn into, you know? And
it becomes self-aware pretty early on.
It does.
Too.
Not even even before the halfway point, I would say.
Yeah. I think it was as early as like chapter 3 I was messaging you and I was like, this is very much aware of what it is and is already making fun of itself in a way that like I genuinely find kind of admirable.
It's like, you know, a year in and Laserbot's like, all right, I know what I'm up against, and just goes with it, which I appreciate deeply. And for a lot of us, Tails Gets Trolled is kind of known in memes like the unsettled Tom picture, the image of Bugs Bunny saying I do all kinds of stupid and gay shit, the Tails wake up, you fucked up big time Knuckles image, High Shovel even, or Kermit the Frog in the robe saying, have you ever been bitch slapped for lack of listening, lack of doing what you're told, because I'm not far from slapping you. And then
I didn't know that any of those were from Tails Gets Trolled.
Until you read it?
Until I read it.
Really?
I knew the quintessential. So I didn't know that Tails Gets Trolled was like this giant project. I knew that there was like that one panel of Tails looking the way he does, but I didn't know that Unsettled Tom was from this. I didn't know that Bugs Bunny was from this.
Yeah.
So I was reading it and I was like, wait, what?
So the list goes on. And then like there's obviously a lot of other reaction images that I've seen be used as panels being used as reaction images. So this has left a huge mark on the internet in multiple ways, more than we realize, which is so fascinating. And in reality, once
anthropologists 200 years from now digging through the internet like, what?
So in reality, once Tails does get dunked on, the story actually does kind of form. And it begins kind of with Shadow killing the trolls and Mario forming a group called the Troll Slayers, and they're designed to help those who have been harmed by the trolls, and it talks about the origins of internet trolls as a whole species, and there's revenge plot, there's fights against Mario and Luigi, so like there's all this stuff happening besides Tails.
There's questions about Christianity.
Yeah, oh boy, that becomes a really big plot point later on. Tails it's more than just Tails getting trolled, you know?
Oh, it grows beyond Tails very, very quickly.
So with each chapter, we learn about struggle, deceit. Really impressive fight scenes happen too, which are just as show-offy and ridiculous as Dragon Ball Z fights. And they're just all done in MS Paint and super gory, which is like really so impressive, oddly enough. And the amount of knowledge of all of these properties mentioned in this series and the consideration and time and effort and detail Laser put into this plot is, I seriously cannot express it enough, is so impressive, especially as this just being like a random project that somebody decided to work on. And
what do you think is a more important property? Tails Gets Trolled or Ready Player One? Silence.
Your silence is deafening. You know?
I have an opinion.
Do you? What's yours, Cass?
I think Tails Gets Trolled has a better understanding of its source materials that it's parodying than Ready Player One
honestly
ever even scratches the surface of.
Yeah, highly agreed at this point.
Ernest Cline wishes he was Laserbot.
Ernest Cline wishes. Somebody even compared the Sonic comic that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s that were like super edgy, and was like, he wishes. The writer, he wishes he was Laserbot. And I was like, yeah, I bet he does. So the best way to describe this is kind of like the comic that you and your friends would make together and just would have all of your favorite characters, so you know all this weird lore about, just in one giant, ridiculous story that doesn't make sense, but only to you. However, it ended up gaining a really big popularity and it ended up becoming really popular and ended up gaining a really big following, which is so impressive, you know? And as the story progresses, so does the absurdity of the whole entire thing.
Oh, God.
So, like, we discovered that there's a secret society called the Defenders, and the Defenders actually save Tails after he is kidnapped by trolls. And the Defenders believe that Tails is the chosen one to defeat the trolls. The Defenders is also ran by Pac-Man, and members include Dexter from Dexter's Lab, the Trix Rabbit, Kermit the Frog, Hello Kitty, the Cheeto, Chester Cheetah. it's really Spyro the Dragon's there. Like,
they have both the Leapfrog Frog and Frogger as well,
and Kermit.
They got all the frogs.
They got all the frogs, and then there's also the Neutrals, who are a group of necromancers.
But okay, I guess they're technically necromancers.
They have to be. Yeah. So they're a group of necromancers who are kind of like 1 foot in the troll hating world, but then also 1 foot of the troll world themselves. The two most important members of the Neutrals, one is not a troll and one is a troll, so there's a lot of like strife there as well. And I love the way that Wile E. Coyote is drawn. Something about it gets me every time his face is in a panel. It's that squishy little snout, and I'm like, I love him. Oh my God. And Sylvester's always staring like dead eye at the camera. Yeah. So the most important necromancer in this series is Wile E. Coyote. And as more concepts and fights and characters are introduced, the comic itself just keeps becoming more and more self-aware and starts doing a lot more fourth wall breaking, a lot more goofs, a lot more current event goofs as well, which doesn't always age super well. However, I kind of appreciate them because reading this comic really felt like a time capsule. And I guess, Cass, do you want to share with us when it kind of clicked for you, when you decided that this comic really knew what it was doing and was really self-aware of what was going on?
So I think it had a lot to do with the appearance of Mario, and like the moment Justin Bieber came into it and they refused to spell his name as Justin Bieber and instead called him Justice Beaver, I was like, this very much knows the crowd it is making fun of, the people it is talking about, and the absurdity of itself, because like there's already an absurdity to this being a Sonic fan comic that's talking about trolling and murder and what have you. But I think when you started to introduce other properties, it became oddly clear that it was like, this knows that it is in part a joke. This knows who it is making fun of. And because I think part of it is like, it brings in this stupid fan absurdity that happens all the time of like, who would beat who in a fight, you know, Mario or Sonic? And I think about that one Stan Lee interview, and it's like, whoever the writer wants to win is going to win.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not, there aren't cut and dry rules when you are writing a story, you know? It is about what works for the narrative. And there is a part of that Laserbot almost seems to capture, that it is never about these moments of like, I have the new incredible power, okay, but your enemy's just going to one-up that over and over and over again. And I think especially at the appearance of the Troll King, I was like, okay, yeah, all right, he knows what he's doing. He has like a very clear vision of this.
Yeah, later on, there's a fight where it breaks fourth wall and Wile E. Coyote is like, I sure hope I win. The polls really want me to win. And it's like, yeah, of course you're going to win because Laserbot knew you're going to win, you know? And I think that was just a wink. And for me, oddly enough, it was when Silver of the Sonic properties was fighting the Prince of the Trolls, aka just Trollface, and
which I love.
Yeah, Trollface kind of makes some like, I'm gonna kill you and rape you comment, which boo, whatever. But Silver actually stops mid-fight and goes, get ready to die. You're a fan of rape? Well, I hope you get all the pain you gave others with your sick ways, but I hope you get it back tenfold in hell, because I'm going to end you. And that's how you know that Laserbot knows rape isn't funny. It's not something that should be really thrown around so easily as much as trolls do. And that almost made me feel better about reading this because it was self-aware. And I appreciate it. And like in the context of the comic too, the character, like a character just died and Silver was fighting Trollface, who was the murderer, head on as like the dead character's best friend was grieving next to him, you know? And this, at this point, when this panel was written, it's been 2 years since the comic has started. So even 2 years into this, rapidly evolving, which I think is really impressive. And Laserbot, like all of us, probably did a lot of growing up and realized that the concept of trolls aren't really funny anymore. And maybe to be one isn't necessarily a good thing as much as the original beginning chapter kind of made it out to be. It's also important to mention that around the time of this comic, around this time of these panels, a hacker troll shows up and briefly hacks the comic itself. And
no.
Yeah, so this is actually inspired by Laserbot's DeviantArt page getting hacked. So he was like, fuck it, like, whatever, I'm just gonna add in a troll hacking me too, because guess what? I get it, it happened. That's just a part of trolling. I'm gonna mention it as well, which I think is, like, kind of really impressive, you know? And we forget that as this comic grew in popularity, obviously critics and trolls were going to start making comments and reading this comic and basically feeding into the same exact thing that this comic was originally about, which I think is kind of really meta in a way, you know?
There is a through line in the comic that I didn't expect, which speaks to the way in which trolls are very clearly radicalized, which is especially relevant now, and like incensed into escalating violence, and how it goes from like, you know, seemingly schoolyard bullying to actual real physical harm in the real world very quickly, and like how that radiates outward, and it very quickly turns into like these sort of like, online at least, petty childish warring factions that have real life repercussions and hurt people. And like, Laserbot, your brain.
Yeah. And over time, this comic becomes less about a revenge fantasy, but more about the realities of being a creator on the internet. And I think that's so fascinating. Because if this never gained popularity, I don't think this comic would go in this route at all. Which I think that really shows how smart Laserbot is about all of this and how much thought and consideration was put into this comic, oddly enough. Even in 2013, trollface was like still a really big thing if you think about it too. So now, now the internet and memes move so quickly, and now everything's like what, a 10-day cycle, But like
not even,
but like trollface was still going pretty strong in early 2013 when these panels came out.
You could go to Walmart and buy a shirt with Le Troll face on it.
I went to Rome July 2012, and in a little shopping square, I saw a troll face shirt, and it knocked me on my ass. I have not recovered. It's been 9 years.
The hottest fashion in all of Milan is Le Troll face.
And that's not to say that trolls don't exist today, but in the concept of Tails Gets Trolled, this type of troll isn't really as easy to come by, at least.
Trolls online have just upgraded and become fascist.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, let's be honest.
Which is scarier, but
yeah.
All things considered, it's not what we consider this time period of trolls to exist anymore, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not as big as an identity online. And this kind of like begs the question, when does it stop being fun to be a troll? Is it...
I don't know how you don't exhaust yourself immediately,
And is it after you start being old enough to kind of reflect on your actions? Is it when somebody catches you and then outs you for being a dick? Or like slowly one by one when your friend group starts drifting away, or you kind of turn on each other because you're only interested in being negative with each other? Calling back to our last episode, you shouldn't be friends with each other if your only interests are being mean and negative together. So I'm really curious to know, like, there's clearly a reason why being a troll has fallen out of fashion.
Well, but I think it has come back in a more insidious way in a lot of fashions. I think that instead of, people trying to get in arguments and pick fights over things that, are seemingly useless or unimportant, it has now become a practice of like white knighting in service to what you believe, your personal ethics, and has instead a big statement that like we can't dive into the nuance of, I will say, but like troll culture, I think in a lot of ways, it has adapted and grown into, a lot of the alt-right people you see online, but there are also facets of it that have dug their claws into this idea of like the people who are obsessed with quote unquote cancel culture and, dogpiling, and like that is sort of, I think, the new face of it, right? Is attacking people for like small transgressions. And I mean like attacking people. And now it's just that it's cloaked in this guise of justified justice. Which is not that, but that's a bigger discussion to be had on another day.
So by chapter 22, Laserbot has become incredibly self-aware and actually includes a character that's kind of white and doesn't have any details. And the whole point of this character is to beg for certain actions to be made and complains about what Laserbot is doing within the comic. There is a line where he finishes off a complaint with, "So I can't come to terms with the fact that trolling is about the most ignorant entity known to mankind." And this just speaks volumes to me because Laserbot's been affected by trolls for the past 9 years now when this panel comes out. He was familiar with it. He's taking on the issues and reading all the comments about Tails. And the same way that Tails got trolled originally, he's facing these comments in real time. And we don't know the origins of why this comic was originally made. Like, I don't think there's ever been a interview where Laserbot's like, yeah, I was trolled when I was 13 years old and I made a comic about Tails to cope. Like, I don't know. I mean, if there is information about that, please send it my way. I would love to read it, But
Laserbot, if you're listening, we would love to have you. We'd love to talk to you.
Big fan of your work. For real. Like, highly impressed.
Laserbot, big fan of that Kermit moment.
Yep.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So, as the comic continues to grow, it's also really amazing to see how the trolls overall are viewed. And in the beginning of the series, the original trolls are kind of drawn and stylized similarly to shonen protagonists. They have moody features, they have cool spiky hair, they have scars, their eyes sometimes, they have heterochromia, And when the trolls a new set of trolls are reintroduced later on in the series during like this fight scene, they are vastly different than what the original trolls were. You know, they're boiled down to generic insults and other spammy phrases that were popular in 2015. They didn't look as unique. Obviously, like, they were distinguishable from each other, like their hair and skin tone were different and stuff like that, but they didn't have as many defining traits as the past trolls did. None of them had scars. None of them had really cool clothing. And maybe it's because they were going to get destroyed in the next chapter or whatever, just kind of as fodder for the fight. But they're really lackluster in comparison to the original trolls. Their clothing are dumpy. They have kind of butt chins similar to the original troll face. Some of them have grotesque teeth. And I mean, obviously, friends who don't have the best teeth, like, I understand to have nicer teeth is a privilege. Like, by no means are you a bad person for not having good teeth or whatever. But the way that they are drawn, it's kind of encouraged for you to view them as lesser characters in comparison to the original trolls that were shown in the comic in the first place. And in the beginning, these trolls would actually have long-winded diatribes about, like, sex with your mom and other edgy shock tactic descriptors, but now these trolls are just kind of boiled down, lackluster, mindless, and repeating jokes like, my name is Jeff, and saying, do you want to build a snowman, to be annoying. So trolls in Laserbot's eyes are no longer cool. They're boring. They are just here to be killed during this massive fight between Wile E. Coyote and a character named Tomorrow.
Well, and I think that speaks a lot to how we as people on the internet shifted our perception of trolls and how we viewed them throughout, like, this short span of time, because it did degrade relatively quickly from, like, oh, this person is really funny, to, oh my god, you're so annoying.
Yup.
Go outside.
Yeah, touch grass, you know? So there's kind of this,
reach out and touch grass.
So there's kind of this emerging clarity that comes later on in the series, which I think is really cool. And I think very few Tales Gets Trolled fans are willing to touch on this, but I genuinely think this comic is a reflection of masculinity and how men are willing to show emotion online.
Absolutely.
And,
yes.
like, for you listening, it's probably like, Teese, like, what the fuck are you talking about? But consider this, in combination with what I just mentioned about the trolls and how they've been kind of demoted in a way throughout the comic, there's also the plot of the neutrals. And the neutrals are called neutral for a reason. They could only succeed in using their necromancy if they do not feel happiness or sadness or any other major emotions. So if you feel an emotion, either your lifespan will shorten vastly, or you have so much emotion that you lose your powers altogether and it kills you. So the neutrals in the story accidentally acquired their power after getting blackout drunk and stumbling into a cult meeting. So they never wished for any of this. And it becomes really obvious in some of the backstory panels, especially for Sylvester the cat. And he talks with Wile E. Coyote about how this is a burden, and he swears to rid himself and the rest of his friends from his necromancy without killing himself.
I mean, it goes even deeper, right, than not feeling happiness or sadness. It is, if we look at Wile E. Coyote, right, who is the most powerful neutral, it is entirely stripping yourself of emotion and trying to view every situation from every single angle to quite literally be as neutral as possible, both in ethical terms and moral terms. It is this idea, right, of, like, the person who comes into your internet argument who you don't know from Eve or Adam and who starts interjecting with, well, actually, kind of deal. If you look at it from this perspective and, like, wants to play devil's advocate, it is that entity personified and made into a faction.
Yep. Yeah, there you go. You get it. So
thank you.
Why is it bad to have an emotion? Like, you can't be somebody who's powerful because you can't mourn or you can't love. Like,
yeah,
with the culture of men not being able to, like, show emotion because it's weak or whatever, in combination with troll culture being very popular pastime for male teenage boys, there's clearly has to be a frustration at some point for how men willingly interact with others online, even if you're not necessarily a troll.
There's also a repeated thread of telling other male characters that they can't cry.
Yeah.
Where they will start crying and other characters will get really upset with them, tell them to stop it, tell them they're weak because of it. And it's like, it happens so frequently that I'm like, this isn't a coincidence. Like, this keeps happening for a reason.
If they do cry, they're called pussies. They're called the F slur.
Their power and legitimacy is immediately called into question.
Yep.
There's a moment where Shadow gets close to tears, and I think it's Knuckles who's like, you need to calm down. Like, nobody's going to trust you anymore if you start crying.
There you
and
go,
it's like,
yeah.
Damn.
Like, it's okay to cry, you know? So, I'd assume it's really tiring to have to constantly one-up somebody if you have a reputation of one-upping people constantly. It's like always the smartass in class saying something, and you're just like, oh, say the line, you know? It's that kind of idea. And isn't it painful? And isn't it, like, not comfortable to never share your emotions with other eyes? I literally cry, like, 5 times a day. I cry so much. So, like, this is such a foreign thing to me. I'm just a really emotional person. So...
Can I say something that I mentioned in Show and Tell, but I think is also just an important piece of information?
Yeah.
So a thing that I don't think gets talked about enough with transitioning on testosterone, and a thing I never realized until my body was, like, dominated by testosterone, is that it is incredibly hard to cry when you have, like, a bunch of testosterone in your body. Like, if you are a DMAB individual, if you are a cisgender man, it can be chemically hard for you to cry. And that, in combination with this idea of, like, boys don't cry, right, which is so deeply toxic and damaging to young boys, like, I thought it was something that was just, like, on a surface level shamed, but, like, no, it is, like, significantly more difficult to cry when you're a cisgender man than it is when you are a cisgender woman. And, like, I don't know how to describe it. It is a physical inability to cry. Wanting to cry, being frustrated because you can't cry, but nothing will happen. And so, like, that sort of emotional release doesn't happen, which has, like, really clarified for me some of the understanding that happens with, like, why a lot of men feel like they can only express themselves through anger, because that is a lot more physically accessible to them. It does not make it okay, but I'm saying I understand it a little bit better. And so, like, layering that on top of all of this messaging that it's inappropriate for boys to cry, they're pussies if they cry, they're feminine if they cry, like, I cannot imagine being a young cisgender teenage boy and, like, finally getting this emotional release and, like, being able to cry and, like, having that, and somebody telling you that's wrong, that's inappropriate, that's weak, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, thank you. That's like really illuminating too, I feel like. Yeah. So I know it's kind of far-fetched to even, like, bring that up as a concept, but I do think there is some validity to there, just between, like, what you just said, what I said, and especially now with how Laserbot has been forced to interact with trolls because of this comic. Do trolls love to make fun of this comic because they think it's genuinely bad, or is it because they see truth in what Laserbot is saying and they're afraid to admit that they suck, you know? Or
because they're following, you know, the generalized practice and crowd mocking of it, you know?
And that's even a pretty common thing within the comic, too, with the trolls. Like, they all live in these little troll camps. They all have little troll generals. They have the Troll King, that the Troll King is, like, the most powerful troll. And a little fun fact.
Sorry, I'm thinking about when, like, Tumblr made that map of, like, what Tumblr would look
Tumblr
like if
Island.
it was a country. Yeah, right. It's like the troll camps.
And fun fact, and there's, like, even talk about Sonichu, which is, like, a whole other episode. Probably 4-part series, honestly, with Sonichu at this point. And the Sonichu is considered the most powerful troll after the Troll King himself.
Interesting.
Yeah, I read that on the wiki. It was done in a Q&A, that answer. Was given.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot to be said, too, because once again, Sonichu is, in fact, a Sonic fan creation, you know? And I think the final thing that I want to talk about is the time it's taken to make this piece and how it's grown within fan circles as well. So it's now available as its own website. This was originally a DeviantArt.
Hell yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. So it was originally a DeviantArt comic, but now it's at talesgetstrolled.org. There's a handful of side stories that you could read as well, and it's grown big enough to warrant its own site and Discord server. They have their own Know Your Meme page, and there's also a Patreon for the series. So, like, that's how you know that...
I want to toss a few bucks to Laserbot.
I was seriously thinking about it myself, too. After about a year-long hiatus, Laserbot knew he needed help, and he actually reached out to the Tales Gets Trolled fan Discord server, and this is, like, truly amazing to me because this is a comic that so many people love and clearly loved enough to be in a Discord server for. And suddenly, this thing that they loved became a collaborative effort, and they became a part of it, which is so wonderful to me because isn't this technically what Tales Get Trolled is about itself, you know? It's about joining together with people to fight for the greater good, to make sure that people aren't taken advantage of. And I was like, damn, that's great, you know? Like, I love to see it. And chapter 23, the conclusion, part 3, is the chapter that the Discord server made together, and it is absolutely fantastic. If I waited a year to see this chapter, I wouldn't even be mad at all, you know? It finished up a fight that's been going on for literal years in our real time, and within like 10 chapters, I'm going to say. It's been going on for a really long time. And the people who worked on it are clearly other fans, and they love this comic as much as Laserbot does. And the exploration and changing of styles in this comic for this chapter in particular adds to the story so much because it just
love that
pushes how important this scene is, this whole chapter is, you know? And it's finally moving this comic forward after it grinded to a halt, you know? And I think that I really appreciate that because he knew, once again, similar to the plot of the story, like he knew that if he had help, he could get this done. I think the improvement of the art in general is something really to be admired as well, too, because like, despite it just being like an MS Paint comic in the beginning, as time goes on, Laserbot and his brothers really do a fantastic job combining all of the properties' competing art styles and making them all work within the same universe. And, I mean, this isn't just to say Tales Gets Trolled. There are, unsurprisingly, tons of Sonic fan works that are lovingly made in collaborative efforts. Solo projects are disgusting, fantastic, ugly, beautiful. You know, there's so many to be talked about. And Tales Gets Trolled gets a bad rep because of how stereotypically cringe it is in the beginning and how you kind of discover about it as a concept.
Potentially damaging it could be, you know, if not read in context.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with the work, you're going to be like, what is this, you know? But in general, if you are interested in Sonic fan works, how they work as a fan culture, I would actually highly suggest SuperEyePatchWolf's The Bizarre Modern Reality of Sonic the Hedgehog, which is a YouTube video on the rise and fall of Sonic and how the franchise mixed reviews has affected Sonic fan works as a whole.
And I'll include a link to that in our episode notes down below.
Please, I would appreciate that. So, I would just, if you're not like wild about the concept of reading Tales Gets Trolled, there's a ton of pieces and analysis videos on it, on YouTube, stuff like that. You could easily just give a little look up for Tales Gets Trolled on YouTube and you'll find a lot of stuff. I haven't really watched anything because I read it and I wanted to make my own conclusions. But I think all things considered, there is ways around reading it if you still want to experience it, you know? And as Tales Gets Trolled is coming to an end, I can't help but think about how it's such a great example of tracking internet culture, how we do view emotions online, how we view masculinity, and how we view troll culture.
Yeah.
A piece that was originally a revenge power fantasy about a bunch of cartoon characters fighting together that has become a story of self-growth, protecting those you love, and smoking weed with your bitches is pretty cool in my book, all things considered, and I think it's a really great example of both personal growth and growth of craft. So, you know, maybe this wasn't so bad of an episode.
No, not at all.
I'm kind of happy I read Tales Gets Trolled in some weird, fucked up way. And
I'm going to continue reading
me
it.
too.
I mean, I'm not done.
Yeah.
I want to get up to speed with it because there is like...
It's updating. It updates on Mondays. Guys, listen to your Author's Note episodes and then read your Tales Gets Trolled update. We're currently going through chapter 24.
Again, with a heavy content.
Heavy content warning. And I didn't go into like all the deception, all the deceit, all of the drug use, all of the talk about STIs. Like, there is a bunch of stuff that goes on in this comic, and sometimes it really did give me whiplash, but oddly enough, it's genuinely fantastic. Chapter 24 is going on right now. It's planning to be 30 chapters, so we're almost there. This thing is almost done, and I cannot wait to see how this ends. I am really excited to see how everything comes together. Also, we did not mention him once, but King Rob, our man.
The guy with no ears.
Rob, the Dragonborn.
That was... every time I laugh at this comic, it is almost exclusively a panel of Rob going, "What?"
He's good. He's
There's
my
a
favorite.
character whose whole power is that, well, I mean, he's Dragonborn, but he just doesn't have ears, so he cannot get trolled because he cannot hear the trolls.
You know that episode.
But that means he also can't hear anything else. And yes, there is something to be said about how that is an ableist joke. Yes, but there's also agency in that power that Rob has, and he is an incredibly strong fighter, and other characters don't make fun of him for not having ears.
They're just like, oh, whoops, Rob doesn't have ears, and then they just keep going, yeah.
There are weird levels to Tails Gets Trolled, and I think it does become a discussion at some point of, like, one, I think it is important to read everything in context. Nothing occurs in a vacuum. And if you go into Tails Gets Trolled without any of the context we've provided, I think you're going to get a very different idea of it. Like a question of like, is it more damaging than it is positive to our understanding of this like internet subculture as it has evolved over time? I don't think so. I think it speaks great volumes, and as weird as this sounds, I think Tails Gets Trolled will be an important piece of fan media for us to look back to sort of contextualize and understand where the internet was in a lot of places, and of course amongst other information. But it's weird how Tails Gets Trolled is at once both a time capsule and this ever-growing and changing thing alongside the internet over, the past decade. It is not at all what I expected it to be. I'm going to be honest. I expected I was going to read this and it was going to be a very one-note discussion, but it's not. Like, there is a wealth of depth to Tails Gets Trolled, and it feels so odd even saying that, but like, it's there. It is a piece that deserves to be discussed and talked about and analyzed.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of fan work can say that. Wild.
Truly wild.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help pick an episode for next month, you can help support the show by joining us on Patreon. All patrons get access to monthly polls to help us decide an episode, and patrons at the $5 tier, again, get access to a bonus episode every month. If we reach certain goals, that can become bi-weekly. That can even become a weekly second podcast. Not really into subscription models, but still want to throw a couple bucks our way. We are also on Ko-fi, that's Ko-Fi. We are on Patreon and Ko-fi at Authors Note Pod. If you aren't able to toss us money, first of all, that's totally understandable, and I get you, and you don't have to throw us money. It's very appreciated, but it's also really appreciated that you just sat down and listened to the show. One of the best ways that you can help us out for free is either by retweeting our promos that we post on our Twitter, sharing the podcast with a friend, or, leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. That helps us out so much. If you want to get in contact with us, find out information about pitching to maybe be on Author's Note, you can find all of that on our website with other relevant links. That's authorsnotepod.com. You can also reach out to us via email at authorsnotepod@gmail.com, and we are on all social media at authorsnotepod. If you want to find more of me, my name is Cass, and you can find more of my work all across the internet at Valhethella. That's VALHETHELLA. Teese, if people want to find more of you, where can they get you at?
You could find me at Vicuñad, VICUNAD. I updated my Instagram for the first time in a year last week. What's up? You can also listen to me at the Fresh Podcast Market, a real podcast about fake podcasts. It's a goof off podcast with my good pal Panda, where we make up hypothetical podcasts. So, our theme music was made by James Yaiullo, and you could find him at Bandcamp under James Y. And Cass, who made our cover art?
Our cover art was made by the wonderful Jala. You can find her on social media at Nyaliest. That's Nyalliest. Until next time, you got trolled.
Damn, you got me.
Be safe. Bye.
Bye.